Hello, everyone. Let us fix our technical situation here at CESCA. Welcome. I am here with Pasha Gerasimov, the Assistant Strength and Conditioning Coach at CESCA Moscow. Welcome to our event.
Hello, everybody.
We are here in beautiful Moscow. It's raining today. This is our first event. Give us a couple of minutes to allow a lot of people, more people to tune in, just a minute or two, and then we're going to get started. While we wait, I'd like to just give you a little bit of an update of what we're going to be doing. Sorry. Okay, what we're going to be doing. This is our first event. Where I was fortunate to participate in other events as a guest, but now we're doing our little live. So it's going to last for about 1 hour, and we're going to talk about resistance training for athletes. The way it's going to go is I'm going to talk for about 30 minutes. I'm going to make not an intro, but I'm going to make some points that I think are important. And then after that, we will be able to receive and answer questions that you can post on the comments down, whether you're watching from Instagram or Facebook. At this point, I want to apologize for not looking directly at the camera sometimes, but what happens is that we are simultaneously broadcasting from two devices. So our studio is not so, let's say, up to date to have two cameras looking at the same camera. But I think it's going to get the job done, and we're going to be able to have a good conversation. So if you have questions, please post them on both the comments, either Facebook or Instagram, and we'll get started. One final correction that I would like to make. Actually, I'm not going to make it. I'm just going to try to see. Please, if you want to look at these comments, not the ones that are coming right now, but the ones with questions, and help me out. Let's try to check this. All right. Okay. All right. Nope. Yeah, I think it's better like that. Posh, you can sit a little bit closer to me. Good job. Okay. So, yeah. Okay. We're trying to fit in one screen, but it's kind of tough. So, let's start. Today's topic, as I announced, is going to be about training athletes using weights. And obviously, I think that people that are tuning in are working with athletes right now, or are coming in from the fitness world, or they're students that are trying to collect some more information about training. Now, I'll back up a little bit, and I will just make a couple of points about how we should think about designing the resistance training program, regardless of whether you're training athletes or you're training normal people. And there's three questions that we need to ask no matter what. One is, who am I training? Before I decide on any program, before I put down my piece of paper, my pen, or my Excel, or whatever what have you to design a program, you should ask three questions. The first one is, who am I training? So this is more related to that person, the personal characteristics of your athlete or client. That some questions that you should ask before you start. First, things like age, things like one very important issue is injury history. You don't just jump in and start designing programs according to your preferences. Your athlete, your client, which I hate this word client, right? But the person that is in front of you is going to direct you to what kind of program you should design. So who am I training? Injury history, super important. Age. Training history. Are they experienced or not experienced in weight training? What they like, preferences. Okay. The second questions that you should ask is, what are the goals? Okay, that relates more to the personal needs of this individual. And now we have to start thinking about what sport do they play. Today we're going to be talking more about basketball, of course, because this is our sport. But we have to consider what is the sport, what is the position that they play, what are the personal characteristics in terms of development needs. So do they need to get stronger? Do they need to get faster? If they need to get faster, what is their speed profile, in this force velocity curve? And we're going to talk about that a little bit down the road, how we select our exercises. But these are things that definitely to consider. The third thing that we should ask is, what are my tools? Okay, what do I have in my toolbox? And this relates to the methods that I'm going to use. So a lot, and this is related to the knowledge. How many methods do I really know? How much do I really know in terms of training, so I can use these tools to achieve my goals, right? So these are things like knowing the use and the effectiveness of plyometrics, knowing the use and the effectiveness of weightlifting exercises, Olympic lifting. So I got a toolbox that I have to fit on the goals of the athlete and the individual needs. And that's how you should think about program design. And why am I saying that? Because out there in our industry, in our field, we turn a lot of times to try to really bring to each athlete and each client what we like. And I'll bring up another example. For example, do you like yoga? Do you like Pilates? Do you like Olympic weightlifting? It doesn't matter if you like it or not. Okay. Did you answer those three questions? These tools feed the other two questions? Who am I training, and what are the needs, right? So we should not get in there with preconceived ideas. Okay, I like weightlifting, and I'm just going to do Olympic weightlifting with all my athletes because it's for everyone. They prepare them for life, or whatever that logo that trend is, right? Oh, because I like bench pressing, I'll bench press the hell out of everybody. No, we should come in and really evaluate, learn how to evaluate people, learn how to. Sorry, I'm just adding people as we go. Evaluate people, evaluate the needs, and really take all this information, put them on paper, and think. And that's a big point, because a lot of people are asking, hey, what am I supposed to be doing? Let's say, what did your evaluation show? What did we come up when we measure somebody? We take all the information, and then we take it back, we put it on a piece of paper, or your Excel or your computer, and then you think. And that is a very important step, thinking, because sometimes we're very much let's say tempted when we evaluate an athlete or evaluate a client to say, hey, I saw this, okay, this is what you have, this is what we need to do. No, there's a lot of confounding factors. There's a lot of things that we should consider before we step into the program design. And when we talk about athletes, that really what they need is it's detail and fine tuning. We should never jump into doing things that we love. It's not about us, it's about them, right? And that's very important to understand. Now, the second thing that I would like, the next step is to understand what is the difference between fitness and sport. And that might be related and relevant, let's say, to a lot of coaches that are out there, that either students and they haven't worked with athletes yet, or they come from the fitness world, or they just don't have so much experience working with athletes. And in my opinion, that there's a few differences. The most important one is this: that resistance training, if we talk about athletes, is complementary to their sport. Okay, what does that mean? It means that the main thing that they're supposed to be doing is not weights, right? It's their sport. So when we come into the weight room, okay, our goal is not a fitness goal. Our goal is not to make them tired. Our goal is not to help them lose weight. Our goal is not to make them feel sore. Our goal is to help them develop all these qualities that usually measurable: to be faster, to jump higher, to be more injury resistant, or to rehab from an injury, right? So these are the things that we should do. We should think about when we're training athletes. And why I say this: there's a lot of videos out there on the social media also that they display. You can see coaches working out, especially youth programs and youth teams, having them jump on boxes, doing all those kind of crazy circuits, forgetting that some important points. First, that these guys, or girls, these athletes are probably coming to you after a basketball workout, after a basketball practice, so they're already tired. Okay, they're fried. They don't need to come in and do more plyos. Let's say if they come in from a basketball practice, or they have something after. That's most of the time the case in 10 months of the year, during the in-season, for example, right? They don't come in rested and using your workout to get fit. They use your workout, they use our workouts to get better in certain qualities, to get stronger, to get faster, to become more explosive, and what have you. We talked about the goals a little bit of each athlete. So this is an important point to understand. We're not there to make people tired. We're there to make them better. And brings us to the next point, which is athletes need program design. They need specific individualized programs and not generic programs out of somewhere. And they need periodization. They need to go step by step and progress and also regress. Because there are many times in their careers and in their practice that we're going to progress and progress and progress them, and then something will happen and we got to step back. What is that? What is that something? It could be fatigue, it could be a tournament, it could be injury. And we have to have all these things in mind, and having a well thought out program and well thought out philosophy on how we build things so we can add or subtract as we need, and not just go and design programs that are look like we downloaded several exercises and put it on our sheet. So I go back to thinking. We have to think. We have to design our programs. And here with Pasha, every time we have lifting in our team, every day we sit down and try to think for each individual athlete what we have to do and what is their condition today. Which brings us to our next point, is to how do you go about designing those specific programs, where when we talk about in season, and we're going to break it down a little bit, I'm not going to talk about that too much because we're going to talk about it later, is you have to think of what the condition of the athlete is today. That's why assessments and testing is great, but it's much more important to monitor, to have the tools and to have the methodology and to have the mindset of trying to understand each day how your athlete feels and what condition they're in, okay? Very, very important. Now, moving on to talking about more detail about resistance training programs, right? And obviously, this is a huge topic. We can be talking for hours and hours and covering all kinds of aspects of it. But the way I'm going to start today is by breaking down the periods of the training periods of one season. So we're going to start by analyzing what's happening to the off season. The off season is, as you know, obviously, like most of us know, it starts at the last game of the season, which might be usually at the end of June. And sorry, I apologize about the breaks. I have to also touch the screen for admitting people in. So we're talking about the off season, last game of the season. First thing we do is we got to give the athlete days off. Okay, we got to give the athletes 10 to 15 days off. Depending of their age, again, we got to go very individualized, their needs, their injury profile, and so on and so forth. And then the rest of the summer is usually summer in basketball. We have to carefully design two things: hard work, but then we have to design and really account for periods of rest. Okay. Now, the off season can span 2 months, month and a half, 3 months, or what have you. And this is pretty much the only time that you can really apply some things that we all learn in our basic periodization class at school. Because as we all know, all these traditional models of Tudor Bompa and all these models that have been developed either in a more theoretical basis or to match individual sports needs, they don't fit in basketball. And as soon as we start with the team, we see that all the things that we learned don't apply. Okay, there's no time to build your training around blocks, for example, right? You can have those 3 weeks of maximal strength and then another 3 weeks of explosive power, whatever it's called, and you just don't, because there's always game, practice, game, practice, and you got 45 minutes to take care of your training 11 months a year. The summer, the off season, on the other hand, is the only time that you can build your blocks. Why? Because you don't have you don't have actually official obligations to play the sport most of the time. Okay, so you're able to kind of space it out. What are the goals in the off season? My opinion is that the most important goal is to take care of all those small or bigger injuries that trouble the athlete throughout the season. And I'm not talking about obvious injuries like ACL, knock on wood, or a heavily sprained ankle. I'm talking about this small pain that I feel on the shoulder, this back pain that comes and goes when I get overloaded, or that ankle sprain that was bothering me. I had an ankle sprain in February, and it never really went away until May. And that's me and Pasha talked before about the importance of taking care of our feet and our ankle, and that it's never an ankle sprain. It's always much more complicated than that. But the off season is that time to solve it. The last thing you want is to enter the preseason of the season after that with pain or some kind of trouble that you might, sorry. All right, all right. The last thing you want to have is entering the next season, preseason, with pain. Okay, this is disastrous because you're never going to be able to participate in your program as with the intensity and the frequency that you need to. And we have seen in this team a lot of trouble coming from athletes coming in our preseason training camp with minor pains. I'm not talking about major injuries. And the problem is they can't train hard, so they start falling behind. They start losing training days because they have to sit out more in order to recover from these intensive preseason workouts that we're going to talk about. And they just losing ground. The worst thing you can do is have somebody start their season with injuries. So the off season is that time. And I remember I had to train over the years in our facility at Performance 22 in Athens, some high-level profile athletes that just came in and wanted to get ready for the national team or wanted to get ready for the next season, and they said, okay, I'm ready to train. Well, we did a screening, or we did just a simple injury recall, and we saw that ankle sprain that you had 2 months ago has never really healed. So the athlete came ready to train, but we decided that we need to rehab them, because the last thing you want to do in the off season also is to load injured joints or injured body parts, right? Because you're never going to be able to reap the benefits of training. So getting small nagging injuries taken care of is your first order of business, and then designing the your full training program. Let me take a pause here and really, I want to turn off the video, or if you're on the video, you can come out. Sorry guys, you have any idea how to do that? All right, if you're listening and you're in the video live, please turn off so we're not distracted. But yeah, so going ahead with this is we should, like I said, we take care of the nagging injuries, and then we go ahead and we plan our program. And there's the off season is where it really happens. We have the opportunity to focus on whatever the need is. Okay, so now this is where it becomes tricky, because the classic periodization says that you should come in and you should design a let's design 3 weeks of maximal strength training, or 3 weeks of strength endurance. Well, in sports, it never works like that. First of all, in the off season, it's very rare that you have an athlete for 2 or for let's say 1 month straight. They usually have national teams. They usually have other things in the social life program, and you can't really have them for so long. So you have to first evaluate what is the level that they are right now, that they need to jump in and train. So you might start your routine after your program, after your short time of rest. You might want to start from a week of introduction and then start moving to heavier lifts. Okay, or do 1 week of introduction or 10 days, a couple of weeks of maximal lifts, and then go into your power training. So you don't have to go in the order that we all learn, right? And that's how you build your off-season philosophy and your off-season program. And then it would be great for me to sit here and say, okay, you should design and do these 5 exercises and do 4 times 6 and give you sets and reps, but that's, like I already said, this is not how it works. You have to identify the specific needs and then use your toolbox, right? And know which tools you have in order to apply it. So I'm going to disappoint a lot of people maybe by not saying, okay, you should do 5 exercises of whatever sets and reps to get that result. It doesn't work like that. One thing that I can say is that what you can do, but what you actually have to do during this off season is you have to address all aspects of performance. So you have to work on your speed, you have to work on your agility, and you have to work on your strength. And you have to work on a rehab, or whatever coaches call it. So, and down the road, I'm gonna talk a little bit more about our daily program design and how you can structure all this on a daily and weekly program. Okay, so the off season is so important that we call it here at CESCA, we call it the early preseason. And the way we go about it is that me and Pasha and our physios are trying to track down our athletes and see where they are around the world, because in our case, we have athletes from all over the world, and try to make sure that they do the work that needs to be done so they are ready in September, or they're ready in August, because I said the worst thing you can do is come injured. The second worst thing you can do is what? Come unprepared, right? Come on weak. And we have several times that athletes showed up and said, oh, I just played a little bit of tennis. You know who I'm talking about, Posh. Or I was running at the beach and things like that. But the way modern basketball is designed, you coming in the preseason, my man, and it's all 100%. How many conditioning workouts we had this season, Pasha? We had 4, 5, 6 conditioning workouts. If you come unprepared, you're done. Okay, and then we start lifting, and like I'm going to talk now about preseason, you're not going to go in 3 sets of 10 with 5 kilo weights. You're going to go start training, because guess what? In 15 days we're playing. Okay, we have a game, so we have to be ready. So you have to come ready. That's why we call the off season the early preseason. You gotta have a continuation and a continuum of training, right? So because when you enter in the preseason, and we're not going to talk about strength training, conditioning, all these other stuff that goes into the preseason. We're going to talk about strength. But one thing you have to keep in mind is that preseason is so loaded with things to do that you barely have time and energy to do much. So that's why you have to pick. So preseason, you definitely have to make sure what's the number one priority in preseason. Now, most people will say, well, we got to get conditioned. My thing is, no, we have to stay healthy. Because like I said, if you get hurt in the preseason, you ain't playing the first half. You might stay out the whole first half of the season, because by the time you need to recover, let's say you have a muscle tear, you stay out for 20 days, you lose 20 days of training when the other guys are training. You need another 10 days to recondition. That's a month. We already started playing official games, and then you're out of the team. And then you have to regain your spot. That's 2 months. That's too much. So first order of business is stay healthy. So you have to pick what you're going to do. For example, because the basketball load is so much, we don't train agility, we don't train speed, but we are training strength. And what's the focus on strength? First thing, quick evaluation. Okay, you need to have in a couple of days to figure out what your athletes are. Do you have veterans? Do you have young guys? Do you have people that carry on a lot of injuries? Do you have trained, untrained people? What is their injury? What is their lifting history? That's important, because maybe you want to apply and you want to, let's say, use your power cleans and your deadlifts and your Olympic lifting with your program, but you got 5 guys that never lifted with Olympic lifts before. So what do? That's why I said you have to know who you're training. So you got to really quickly understand what's going on, and then you have to individually design programs. So that's another point for resistance program design. There's not a generic program for everyone. So how do you start? Do we start with strength endurance? No. Well, some athletes might be ready and jump right into heavier lifts, but some other guys might be coming from injury, might be coming from a stint in the national team, so they need to go lighter. So in our weight room, if you walk in, you see different people doing different things, especially in the preseason, right? Because they have different needs. So you have to understand that pretty quick, and not just write a program for everybody. That drives me nuts every time. Oh, we're going to be doing 3 sets of 8 and 3 sets of 10. That's why you can't send programs to athletes like that. Okay, let the whole team do this. So what about individual needs? So the first order of business in the preseason is to keep people healthy. So you have to be targeted. You have to do a lot of work with joint control / stabilization. I don't like the word stability when we talk about athletics, because it's about joint control and not rigid structure stability. And from then on, you have to design a short 45 minute workout that will address the needs. And the needs are specific. So we need the first, I'd say that our concern is to raise the strength levels to the guys that are not strong enough to sustain what's coming, at the same time allowing them to participate in basketball practice. So that is a little bit of a challenge, and we're going to talk briefly about exercise selection in those days. And then try to make sure we progressively, and the key word is progression here. We got to progressively load them so they're able to get stronger and at the same time participate in the sport. And I'm coming back to my introduction that the number one priority, all right, the number one priority is keeping people healthy and knowing what the needs are. Okay, so that's in our preseason. Lifting frequencies 2 to 3 days a week. We don't lift that often. It might be 2, it might be 3. If we travel to play tournaments, we make sure we have a weight room and we train there as well, because it's crucial. I put the same weight, let's say the same importance in strength training than we do in conditioning workouts. And we're crazy to just not to miss those days, because strength training is what's going to keep people healthy. Okay, and when we talk to coaches, we try to let them know that when we say that we want a weight room day or a lift day, we're not interested in building big muscles. In sports, we're not interested in aesthetics, and that's something that I forgot to say. We're not interested about how you look. Athletes look good because they do the right things, they do the things they need to do to perform, and the adaptations make them look good, if that makes sense, right? So we're not concerned about six packs or big shoulders or big chest. We want them to perform on the court, okay? So moving on from our preseason, then we enter in our in-season, which is pretty long, right? It's a long season. It starts from October and it's done in about June, around the end of June, hopefully with Final Fours and finals and all that. But every week for us is a micro circle, and we live week by week, and that's the juice of the strength training design. Let's say that's the focal point of strength training design in season. You have to take it 1 week at a time. Well, of course, we make a plan. We know what's coming in the month. We mark down the days that we're probably going to have a lift, and then we make sure to have at least one lift per week with the whole team as a group. Actually, we have several groups in our let's say in our logistics. We never bring the whole team at one time, because we want to coach and we want to make sure we are on top of it's 2 of us, right? So we have 3-4 athletes at a time maximum. We try at least to have, so we can coach. But we have to have this one heavy, we'll call it heavy day, where the focus is going to be strength. It's going to be strength. We're going to load some lifts, okay? And we're going to talk about it in a little bit, how we do that and what lifts we pick, and at least once a week. Now, the rest of the program, it's a little bit chaotic, because we have the players that play, we have the players that don't play many minutes but did play and need to play again. We have some young guys that don't play at all, and we got the injured guys. So we got at least 4 different groups of athletes in a team of 16 that need special care. So what we do is we try to bring them every day. Some people call it microdosing, but we don't use it in that exact sense that it was designed microdosing, just doing whatever we can at the time. Okay, thank you for that. But we do focus on getting everybody in. We have a software program where we kind of laid out who came, what they did. So we make sure that every athlete gets at least 2 lifting sessions per week, at least, with full lifts, plus their individual, let's say, injury prevention, whatever that means, work, let's light work of taking care of certain things, certain problems, but at least two workouts. One is our heavy day and one is our lighter day, okay? And we are very, very thorough on that. We never, and I had several arguments with coach when we're flying back from trips. I said, we need to lift tomorrow, because this is the only thing that was going to keep us as healthy as possible in this brutal season. Okay, and we try to explain that we're not going to, do bench press and become bigger. We try to get people to have what, okay, to have consistency, because this is the biggest problem that I see out there, is that athletes enter the whole process with a lot of enthusiasm, but down the road it gets worn down. Okay, they're not consistent with the lifting, fatigue, mental fatigue, scheduling problems. And it all creates a big mess. So stay consistent. Consistency is what's going to bring results, really. Whether we talk about in season, off season, or whatever, consistency is what's going to really bring results to your program. And that's one of the biggest problems that we see is, we skipped that day because we traveled, we skipped the other day because I was tired. And we are very, very thorough on staying on top of that. Okay, so 2 lifting days, very seldom 3, only with the younger guys that don't play. Everybody else goes for 2. One is a heavy day, one is a lighter day. Now I'll back up a little bit and just explain you how we structure our program in general. So let's say either it's off season, in season, or preseason. Our strength day has the following structure. First, we start with a warm up, movement preparation, what have you. Okay, if we know, and a lot of guys do have these problems, if we do know that an athlete or I said guys, girls also, right? Don't get me confused. We work with guys this last year, so it comes automatic. No politically correct things here. So what I was about to say is that we start with movement preparation, and we get the athlete that has. We know our athletes have certain issues. Somebody had a past hamstring injury. Somebody had an old ankle injury that we need to monitor, and so on and so forth. So no matter what, according to each program that somebody might have, problem that somebody might have, we will design a warm up that kind of has exercises to address that problem. We give a lot of focus on what happens in the ankle and below, okay, the foot. And that's a whole different conversation, but I believe this is a very important body part, and it's very often overlooked. So, and we have I would say most of our athletes have ankle issues. So first, there's always in our warm-up, in our prehab, in our, let's say, movement preparation, we have ankle or foot exercises, whether we're going to work on the toes or the small muscles that the intrinsic muscle of the foot or the foot in general. So our first 4 or 5 things will be designed to address such problems. Okay. Now, if you're in the off season, the next thing after your movement preparation, your warm up, is your explosive / speed work. So the way we do it is after warm up, if we're in the off season, we're going to work on speed. And this is not the focus of this talk. We can have another live discussing speed, but anything that is explosive, linear lateral agility, linear lateral speed, agility, most relevant in basketball, and then our plyos, or all these combined, are going to go in the first part of our practice. And it's going to escalate from speed, from things that are like on the right hand of the force velocity curve to the things that are more to the left. So we go to speed, explosive, reactive stuff to heavier stuff, to heavier lifts, to Olympic lifts, to maximal strength. Okay, that makes sense, because we want to do all these explosive exercises when the neuromuscular system is actually rested, and we're able to give maximal effort. Because if you don't, then speed training and agility doesn't make much sense. So warm up, speed, agility, everything that is explosive, and then we'll go into strength, and then we're going to go into regeneration or recovery stuff. Okay, so this is the basic format. Now, if you're in the in-season, like I already mentioned, or you're in the preseason, we don't do agility and we don't do speed with all of our athletes. Okay, we do this with the guys that don't play. And if we have back-to-back, let's say, EuroLeague games, and our young guys don't play, then on top of the court, the work they do on the court, they work harder in the gym. They lift heavier, they do more jumps, they do a different kind of program. That's why I said we got different sets of athletes within the same team. But our main guys, the main program, let's say, does not have those components of explosive work with agility, jumps, and plyos, or jumps, let's say. Okay. But it does have heavy lifts, and it does have explosive lifts. So we will go with our warm-up, and then our first 3 exercises. Actually, let me back up. If we talk about preseason, we could talk about in-season, then we're going to go, like I just mentioned, we're going to go from our movement preparation and warm-up to our heavier exercises. So we're always going to have, in our heavy day, like I said, we have a heavy day and a light day. We'll use things like deadlifts, all kinds of Olympic lifts, depending and their variations depending on people's needs and the skill level. And we're gonna, take time and teach Olympic lifts. That's a whole other issue. I'm actually going to have a talk in our summer EuroLeague Strength and Conditioning Coaches Summit in the summer that we have in Athens. My talk is going to be on implementing Olympic lifts in a basketball team. But we do use our heavy lifts, which is going to be deadlift, it's going to be squatting, it's going to be heavier cleans and snatches, either with bars or with dumbbells. Not so much with dumbbells in our heavy day. And we do use this split of um, knee dominant, hip dominant, and all of our horizontal, vertical push pulls and all that. The first exercise that we're going to do is going to be our explosive lift. So anything that it's um, uh, either squat jumps or Olympic lifts or anything that has this speed strength component will go first. Then we're going to hit on strength. We're going to go heavy deadlifts, heavy squats, heavy RDLs, depending on the day. And then we're going to go and focus on the upper body, which is the classic pull push scheme. A lot of med ball throws. I love med ball throws. Throwing, I think they're great for developing certain types of strength and great for core development. And this is kind of like our basic structure of our program. I know it might sound a little bit confusing and definitely needs to be analyzed in more detail, but over a live, I just want to throw out ideas and just kind of explain what we're doing instead of just trying to explain all the processes and how we exactly teach things. And we are going to have more events on that, either webinars, which I'm right now designing for the future, or live events like the one I mentioned in the summer in Greece. So when it comes to strength training, this is our basic setup, okay? And starting from this, let's say, frame, we start coming into more detail and start analyzing what's happening in the individually and what the needs are for each athlete, and then just start really exploring this never-ending, let's say, field, which is strength training for athletes. So I'm going to start replying to some of the comments that we have here on the Instagram, and then also from some things that I already received in the previous days. As questions and as comments. Somebody asked how many people we have on staff here at CESCA. It's myself and Pasha as strength and conditioning coaches, and we have a staff of how many are we? 5, 6 doctors and rehab specialists. We have great physios. Yep, we have rehab specialists that are in between us and the injury. So we have an injured athlete, of course, there's always the diagnosis. Then we have the classic physio that goes into reducing swelling and doing all the things that physios do. No offense to the physios, great respect for the work. But then there's this gray area, this gap of someone that is finished with the classic, classic physiotherapy modalities, which is bringing down the pain, like I mentioned, reducing inflammation and kind of recovering the athlete. The gray area is how you start somebody that is almost, there's a little bit of in pain or just healed, and bringing them to this level that they need to be in order to practice. That area that needs progressive, low volume, low intensity, or low intensity for sure, volume can be big, larger, but it requires knowledge of biomechanics and exercise and physiotherapy. So that gray area is hard to cover, and we have a great specialist here, Makis Kodoyanis. He's also Greece, Kosmas Kodoyanis, that he's great at that, and he helped us, bring somebody from a heavy ankle sprain to the level that we can take them and start working with them. Okay, so that is a very important, let's say, position, and there is a gap in the sports world in this in between. So that's why I always say that strength and conditioning coaches, we need to know physical therapy. We need to know what happens to the body right after it gets injured, so we're able to work with not only healthy and fully functioning athletes, but also these athletes that just came out of therapy. Okay, and that's a different mindset, and it's a different set of skills that you need to have. Definitely different mindset in terms of this very progressive loading, okay, of the body at that time. And also physios, they need to understand what is happening in our world. Okay, that somebody, when they finish physiotherapy and they're not in pain, they need to train and they need to come up to that level of physical ability so they can participate in our practices. So we need to learn each other's words. We need to get educated and communicate better. Okay, so I hope I answered that question. There's another question, is that what do you do with a team before the day before the game? So that is a good question, and obviously you should have corrected me because I didn't talk about the light day of our in-season strength training. So we said we have a heavy day and we have a light day. The light day comes either after a game or 1 or 2 days before the game. okay? And there's many occasions that unfortunately we don't have the time to lift with the frequency that we desire, so we have to lift before the game. Okay, and again, we go into the who we're lifting with, and are they going to play in the game? But let's say they're playing in the game. Okay, so we go on those light days. We go intense and short. Okay, so the day before the game or 2 days before the game is going to be short and intense, and we're going to use some kind of explosive exercise. Let's say we're going to do a dumbbell snatch. We're going to do dumbbell hang pulls, and we're going to do. We're not going to lift too heavy. We're not going to go into our heavy squats or single leg squats, or we're not going to go into our deadlifts. But we are going to have a short and intensive workout, mainly exploring. I'll back up. Using different types of movements. So we have, a lateral lunge or a squat to press. So the intensity is still high, but we don't. The goal is not to make the athlete tired, not to make the athlete sore, but still give them some adaptation. And volume should be short. It should be definitely smaller, but intensity should stay up. So that's how we kind of generally approach our program. When we have either after the game when the guys are tired, so you can't have an athlete that played 20 minutes on a EuroLeague game squat, or you do Bulgarian splits, or what have you, what your preference is. And also before the game, you can't have them lift too heavy. So this is our lighter day. Our heavier days are when we have 3 to maybe sometimes 2 days, depending on the game, and we have more time to recover. The day after the lift, everybody's sore and tired, and they usually don't practice well, and you have to communicate that with your coach, because they expect the athletes to perform at their max every time they step on the court, but they also need to lift, and they have to lift heavy if we want to get the adaptations that we want, right? That we need, to keep improving throughout the season and staying healthy. So this is what we do before the games. How long do you need to transfer strength into power development? That's another question. Well, this is a long conversation. First of all, we have to define what is power. Power is a function of strength, basically, combined with speed. I'm just make it super rough and super simple. So we usually, because also now we're talking about the off season, when you can actually work on maximal strength or near max strength, and then try to work also on power. Usually we do it on the same time. So we'll have a heavy day, but we're always going to have some plyos. We're also always going to have some explosive type of work, right? So I don't know about specific time frames, because, like I said, there's a little short time over there in the off season to really interact with the athlete. But I think it happens pretty fast, and we've seen athletes training for a month or a month and a half, going through 2 phases, let's say one heavier and one lighter and more explosive, and they still get better. You just see improvements on their acceleration, on the vertical jump, on our measurements and everything. So I think I'm a strong believer of training the traits at kind of the same time, heavier on one aspect, let's say heavier on maximal strength and lighter on power, and then transferring that and then reversing that, rather than finishing with one block and going into the other. Okay. Another question: which is the recovery the day of? So I guess the question is, what is the recovery day after the game? I assume that is the question. So, and I had another question about recovery, and what we do is when we have hard games, let's say a EuroLeague game or a hard local game in the VTB league, we tend to give the next day completely off. The guys need to stay home and rest, mentally, physically, and stay with the loved ones and recover. So the day after the game is our recovery. However, a lot of athletes want to come in and either have a light lift because they don't want to let the body completely go inactive, and that helps them stay. I don't know what the word. I don't want to use the word activated, but it makes them feel better on the practice day, the day after the day off. Or they come in and do therapy and do all kinds of modalities that we have. We have cold water immersion. We have game readies and cold saunas. I've never been into that. It's very cold. But anything that we have, and of course work with our physios and our and do all all the everything that's necessary to reduce the pain that the previous game caused. And I know sounds kind of weird, but that is true. As most of the athletes that play the game have some kind of pain or hit from the day before. So our recovery day is the next day, and we make sure to give them everything that they need to help that recovery process. And the question about recovery that we had, can you note down, because now it's scrolling. Sorry, I don't want to miss any of your questions. Keep it here. Okay, so let's take it one at a time. So I was talking about recovery and how we can monitor intensity and volume in the different periods, in season, off season, and preseason, so we avoid overtraining. What I would like to say, and I kind of thought about this question because we are talking about resistance training today. It's very hard for put me in the picture, buddy. So it's very hard for us. It's very hard actually to get overtrained with strength training in season and preseason unless you actually overdo it in with volume and intensity. Now, how much intensity and how much volume is specific to the teams and the athletes that you work with. So let's say here at CESCA, our athletes can go, they can have heavy deadlifts going into, I'll just speak generically about that because we do use velocity-based training. I don't want to confuse you with speeds and things like that. But let's say you work at 80-85% of your maximal strength, you do your deadlifts. Same goes with your squats and same with your deadlift, with your RDLs or your posterior chain work. And then you can go and practice, and you'll be a little bit sore, but that's normal for you, right? It's normal for us because we have built it in the preseason. And that's another goal of the preseason, is to build the capacity to work in the in-season, okay? Now, in another team, that might kill them. So you got to find what your limitation is and what are your athletes able to tolerate without that hindering them in their basketball practice. And that is something that you have to find out individually for the team you're working with. I cannot tell you that, hey, just make sure you write down everything and you monitor the frequency of training, so 1 or 2 or 3 times a week, and what you actually are doing, because that's how you're going to kind of figure out what's appropriate for your situation, okay? So what's good for me might not be good for you and vice versa. So, but you have to monitor and you have to listen to your athletes. Now, that's a huge topic about how do you monitor people? What do you use? You use heart rate, you use GPS, you use this and that. We use mostly subjective data. We have, again, a software program that we put down everything. We work a lot with RPs and session RPs, which is time of practice, of activity, and multiplied on how hard it felt from 1 to 10. And that gives you a number, and then we're able to get some numbers, some quantitative data. But one of the things that we always say when people come in is just ask them, how do you feel? And if you work with us long enough, you'll be able to figure it out. If they come in the weight room and sit down and they, just sit down and start rolling and start stretching when they usually are active and energetic, then you know that they're overtrained. So you have to take some steps back, or let's say that was an example, or whatever tools you use to monitor training or overtraining, that will make you think and take some steps back and really start wondering what was the cause of this fatigue, what caused them this week to be more tired than last week. And it can be a lot of things. It can be travel, it can be the schedule, it can be the games that were harder, it could be anything. But because we're talking about strength training, I think it's kind of hard if you're like rational coach to overtrain people with weights during the season. It has happened, and I had a conversation with some strength coaches recently that they went the other way around, that we said that, this is what I want to do to my athlete. Well, let's go ahead and do it and then see what happens, instead of asking those questions that we talked about in the beginning. Who am I training? What are the goals and what are the methods? So if you go, because you were a power lifter and now you work with basketball, you start doing powerlifting with the athletes, yes, for sure, next month they're going to be tired and some of them going to be injured. Or if that's another big point that I'm going to make, like that I think is important. That if the basketball coach is doing 2-hour workouts, let's say you work in a youth program and they're doing 2-hour workouts because that's their philosophy, and that's fine. It, it can be fine. But if you go into the weight room and say, okay, I don't care what the coach did. I believe in heavy lifting, so I'm going to go ahead and do my thing, and I'm going to lift heavy, and I'm going to do my squats. Then what happens to these athletes? 15 days later, they can't walk. And guess whose fault is always going to be? The strength coach. So you gotta really think about those things. And when you start designing programs, you have to take all those things under consideration. Let's get some more questions. Can players hit the gym on their own or need to get a key? Well, we're fortunate enough to have our facility open 24 hours a day, so we don't need to come in here and open the facility with a key. If you want to get in the locker room, you can come 3 o'clock in the morning, get into the weight room, in the locker room. The same goes with the weight room, which is good and bad, because we don't want to answer the questions because we don't have much time. We don't want people to be in the gym on their own. Safety first. You never know what's going to happen in here. There's weights, there's plates, there's bars. Never know. I was always scared about that. And here's 2 of us. We tell our athletes, anytime you want, anytime, any day, any time of the day, send us a message. We'll come here. You want to do your own thing because you have your routine. Even if some other trainer gave you, I want to be here. I'm going to sit there and watch you because first, I'm care about your safety. Second, I want to know what you're doing. Because if you have your own little routine that you were doing in your previous team, which is fine, and I respect that, I need to know what you did so I know what to program the next day. Okay? So it's not about ego tripping or anything like that. We need to monitor our athletes. We don't want them to live on their own. Let's take another question from Facebook right now. How you can put the basketball training, low intensity, in the off-season strength and conditioning program weekly. So how can you combine basketball with our strength stuff? Okay, so the way we do it is like this. In the off season, we lift 4 times a week: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays off, Thursday, Friday. Okay, Saturday, Sunday off from lifting. So that gives you enough time to load, a little bit rest, load, more rest, and load again the next week. This circle, usually we have found that we have to make maximum 3 week circles, right? After that, the athletes start breaking down. So after the 3rd week, we're gonna use a week of loading. So Monday, Tuesday, day off from lifting, Thursday, Friday. That happens in the morning. In the afternoon, most of our players do individual or practice or are practicing and for the sport. So this is how we kind of do it. I don't like when they go from strength training to basketball. We ideally you have two different sessions in the day, morning and afternoon. If you have to do it like that because of logistics or time, you do your strength training first and then you go on to the basketball. It's impossible to get any kind of gains in strength, especially in the off season when you have to go intensive and heavy after coming back from basketball. Okay, so do your strength first, do your basketball second. Yes.
For example, you got a rookie in your team.
Okay.
Is it important for you his habits of resistance training before his experience, or you go by your way?
So the question was, if we have a rookie in our team, I repeat that possibly because maybe the microphone didn't get the question, but that's a great question. If you get a new guy in your team and he does his own stuff or he doesn't know, I guess this is the question. Do you respect his program or do you try to bring in on your, how do you handle that? Well, that is a tricky one because you always have to respect your athletes. They have their own habits, they have things that they liked and the things that they don't like. So you have your things that you think are going to help them. Our philosophy here is that we want them to start doing the things that we feel will help them more. Now, if there's resistance in that, either because they did it before and they felt pain, or they try to do, let's say, Olympic lifts, they never coached right and they never did it and they never felt the benefit of it, we try to, educate them. And I love what Mark Verstegen was saying, that education, motivation through education. You have to really explain the athlete why you want to do something, because a lot of times, coach, is that people are resistant to you, to your it's an ego thing. I don't want to, I got my stuff, or I don't do squats, I don't do lifts, I don't like it. Well, you have to go in the right way, explain, understand why they don't want to do it, understand if there's a way to go around it, and then go step by step and have them do simple things. For example, hey, let's just start with our second pull. Let's start with some shrugs. Let's start with some light deadlifts. And if it hurts, well, we'll go back, don't worry, we'll do something else. If they're rookies, if they're younger guys, and they come in with bad habits, then we make sure to break it down. Like, we're going to back up our training as much as we need to instill good habits, from holding the bar correctly to lifting correctly. So especially with younger guys that have their whole career ahead of them, we make sure to do the right thing, whatever right it is for us. So we got 6 more minutes, guys, at least for the Instagram. I'll move on real quick. And here I see a lot of questions. I think it's impossible to cover them all. Now, I would like to ask you this. Whatever questions you have, okay? So let me center that. Whatever questions you guys have, I want you to send them either on my personal messages, either on Facebook or on Instagram. And I promise I'm going to answer everything. Just give me some time. And if there's questions that are similar, we're going to either do another live, or we're going to do a short webinar in the coming days. But I think it's impossible. We got about 6-7 more minutes. I think it's impossible to answer everything. So please do write me all your questions, and I'm going to answer them all. So in the 10-15 days of rest period after the season, your advice to the athletes is not to do any physical activity, or by the term rest, you mean active recovery, like some mobility and corrective exercise. Well, that's a good one. If you have some stuff, let's say you had an ankle that tends to lose mobility, if you sit around for 2-3 days, definitely go ahead and keep working on that. When I say rest, go to wherever you want. Active rest is always is a better choice. So ride your bike, swim, do whatever you want, but only on those rest days. Because when I was training, I was a long time ago, I was playing, they told us that the off season is about doing bikes and use your month to swim and build your conditioning. That's not it. That's not what I mean. We're talking about those 10-15 days of rest. If you had a hell of a season, if you had a season like ours that you play 70 games 3 times a week, then take 10 days and do nothing. Just lay on the beach or take care of your personal social life. Okay. Another one from Facebook. So for college athletes in the off season, would you focus a little bit more on strength training to set a solid foundation for the future? I think I answered that. I don't care if they're college athletes or they play in the local league over there in some city. They have to work on the strength and prepare for the next season and get better. Strength is increasing your strength is a key component in athletic development. So yes, definitely, it doesn't matter which level you play. In season, would you incorporate exercises like heavy pin squats or block pulls in order to reduce soreness from the eccentric part of the movement? Well, you could. We don't do it that much because we want the movement. If we don't want them to get sore, we manipulate exercise mode, so we don't introduce new things, let's say 2 days before the game. That's very important. You don't want to teach a new exercise or use an exercise that you haven't used in a month in the coming time before the game, and control exactly what you said, the eccentric part, control the load, control the speed, and then you control soreness and fatigue. We don't do the pin moves, although it's not wrong. It's just something that we don't do. We do concentrating only squats if we want to reduce the eccentric part. That's our main thing, because also it helps athletes with their starting strength. So that's something that we do use. There's so many things. I'm not going to answer anything on recovery because it's not the topic, and we're going to waste time. Well, also, although you kind of realize that I love talking, and we could be talking about it all night, but we're going to move on. Considering the setup you told us about preseason 1 and 2, the periodization you use is based on linear progression or non linear or something else? Well, kind of linear progression in the first preseason, so the off season, but definitely not during the preseason. Preseason is got to see every week what you have to do, and you have to see every athlete what is capable of doing. And I think we're going to make a live here, and we're going to be a little bit more prepared to analyze how we go about picking exercises for different types of athletes, and I think that'll clear any confusion that it might be out there. I saw the same question on Instagram. How do you assess training load? 1RMs, velocity-based training, or other methods? We do go by velocity-based training on our main lifts, Olympic lifts and our main lifts, squats, deadlifts, Olympic lifts, and then we go by 1RM on the rest. Okay, so we use GymAware for that. And that is going to be the last question. What are your thoughts around hitting the gym post game to take out of the way one of the strength sessions? Is it applicable? I heard about it on Michael Boyd's podcast. Well, I do respect Mike Boyd, obviously. I don't see workouts as taking it out of the way. If you can't lift hard, if you can't lift the way we want you to lift, it's better to come on another day. I prefer you come the next morning than the day after the game. If you played, it's impossible to get anything good from the lift unless you just have a goal that is different from improving strength. Okay, so I don't think did we ever lift after the game? I don't think we ever did. No, only if somebody didn't play and we had those cases that they just want to do something and they did it. So this is regarding this question, and I think there's a lot more questions here, guys. So let's do this. Let's have you send me your questions, and me and Pasha are going to sit down and answer them. You're going to do some work too. Okay, and let's plan for the next one. Let's plan for our next live, and I'm going to base it to your questions. And I'm sorry that we didn't get enough time to cover it, but next time we will focus more on your questions. But definitely, please send me your question. I don't want to leave anything unanswered. Okay, so thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for taking the time and your Saturday night to listen to us. And thanks, Pasha, for helping set things up. And we'll see you in the next one. Have a good one.